Hello, this is Statler Smith. You are watching one installment of a weekly series where I write an essay about something that's on my mind, record myself speaking that essay, and then upload that video to YouTube. For reasons set forth in the initial video in this series, this is a practice for myself. As such, this video will likely not be entertaining or particularly educational. Perhaps one day I will have value to add to others, but in the words of Aragorn, King of Gondor, it is not this day. If you choose to keep watching, feel free to give feedback on the clarity of thought and speech, as that is what I am trying to improve. Please let me know if you have undergone a similar journey or have tips to share. And who knows, maybe I will eventually add more video editing. With that, let's get into this week's essay. Hello. Recently, I've been thinking about a conversation I had a few months back. I asked a friend of mine what was on their mind, and along with a few other probing questions, they proceeded to explain their categories for different types of people, what makes the different categories more or less valuable, and whatnot. A philosophy of being, or theory of people, if you will. While I was debriefing the conversation with my wife, who was also with me, she mentioned that this conversation reminded her of philosophies that I've had and told her about. When that explains a little bit of the nostalgia that I felt while I was talking with my friend. While our theories had their differences for sure, my previous philosophies or theories and my friends were similar in one main way. We were both at the top of our respective pyramid. We both considered ourselves above the vast majority of humanity in some way. Not unlike the fact that most people believe they are in the 80th percentile of moral people, right? A little bit more extreme than that, but that's the concept. My essays the past few weeks have brought this self belief to the forefront of my mind. Frankly, I thought that my theory of morality was spot on and pretty well defensible. Once I wrote down the details, I was able to take a closer look at the premises, and my goodness, I am much less confident now than I was previously. I'm not saying that the whole idea was only so that I could feel good about myself. I think there were some valuable observations and some good points and arguments made, but I can't deny that motivated reasoning played a role in the construction of that theory. And so these experiences have directed me to look more closely at motivated reasoning. Where are other areas of my life that I may be in a similar situation? Am I blindly using motivated reasoning in other areas as well, other theories? For those who aren't familiar with motivated reasoning, the term refers to the tendency of humans to twist what we hear or think to align with what we already believe or what we want to believe. This can take a few forms: ignoring or discrediting uncomfortable facts, elevating palatable evidence, or attacking the character of people who disagree with us. The examples I mentioned previously of my own theory showcase how we can set up entire ways of viewing the world to support the belief, in that case, that we're special, right? Other examples are pretty prevalent in the political sphere. Both sides of the political aisle tend to ignore the facts that contradict their closely held beliefs. This doesn't mean that motivated reasoning is always illogical or immoral. Our perspective is the perspective we interact with most frequently. It makes sense, then, that our perspective and our way of doing things will be prominent in any way we view the world. Additionally, motivated reasoning is not necessarily immoral either. Of course, this heavily depends on how we define morality, a task at which I am less confident in my own capability. But motivated reasoning is rarely intended to hurt others. Frankly, it's mostly used to protect one's sense of self, one's sense of identity, their competence, etc. Sort of emotional and mental self defense, if you will. And self defense is generally considered a moral good. So, what are the risks of motivated reasoning? Participating in motivated reasoning is understandable and makes sense from a human perspective. It does lead us to thought patterns and beliefs that don't match objective reality. In other words, motivated reasoning leads us to delusion or believing statements that are not accurate. So, with that definition, what are the risks of believing things that aren't accurate? I'll talk through a few that I thought of at the individual and the group level. For individuals, believing statements that aren't true can lead to pain, our own or that of other people. Let's take the examples above. What's the harm in believing that we are more unique or special than we actually are? If we believe we are more special, that inherently means that we believe that others are less unique and less special. That belief will come across in how you speak to them. People are able to pick up on that, especially when you think you're better than them. They will not want to be around you or talk to you when they catch on that you think that they are less than yourself. That leads to isolation. Ironically, that isolation can often lead to more strongly believing that you are special, which is weird, but it happens. And that ultimately is what caused the isolation, right? So that then leads to deeper isolation. And since strong relationships are a vital part of a healthy life, both of the physical and mental kind, when taken to the extreme, the perspectives described above can lead to a lack of physical and mental health, also known as physical and mental pain. Most other forms of motivated reasoning, at the individual level at least, follow a similar issue pathway. Living a different reality than those around you isolates you from them. Close friends and family will notice that you live in a different world, and it makes it increasingly difficult to have conversations or build deeper connections when that's the case. Communal delusion, which is what I'll call motivated reasoning within a group, leads to pain as well. Reality has a way of asserting itself. When a belief system lacks predictive power through alignment with reality, fewer people will adopt that system, meaning that people will abandon the communal delusion, right? Other issues are related with how the delusional community treats those outside of the community. Many on the political left or right are unable to speak with each other or treat each other with respect. In their delusions, they have lost the ability to see political opponents as people. All sorts of issues arise from this. Ironically, that leads to behavior that strengthens each side's respective delusions in what I'm calling delusional collusion. Shout out to the Arbinger Institute. Um, if somebody on the right says that all people on the left are this way, and that's heard by somebody on the left, that person believes even more strongly that the people on the right don't see things clearly, and they respond stating their belief, and then somebody on the right hears that, and the cycle continues. But I digress. Another issue with communal delusion is how they treat those who leave the group. If the delusion is strong or emotional enough, leaving the group forms relational Grand Canyons. Feelings are hurt, and then the responses hurt more people. Families are torn apart, friendships go up in smoke. At times, it results in physical violence. So again, similar to individual motivated reasoning, communal delusion results in physical and mental pain. Now, in both the individual and community cases, the pain only occurs if the motivated reasoning is taken to a more extreme level. Motivated reasoning does create its own downward spiral, but early in the process, it's fairly simple to break out of it. And while every break results in a little bit of pain, it's just a bit, especially at the beginning. Like this past week or so, I have felt some cognitive dissonance as I've come to terms with my own motivated reasoning. The pain hasn't been that bad, especially since this happens to me fairly often, where I realize that I am believing something or saying something to prop myself up. So I'm accustomed to this kind of pain. With a communal delusion, the illusion usually dissipates before any major problems arise. At least so far. I know that there are many who believe that we are headed towards an ever more divisive society, and I think that's certainly that certainly has some evidence to back it up. Um, but I think with how common motivated reasoning is within groups, most of the time it does not progress anywhere close to a problematic level. So while there are risks with motivated reasoning, it usually doesn't materialize. And I think that the percentage is so low because the prevalence of motivated reasoning is so high, and we just don't see it because it's like it's like the air we breathe. Now I'm grateful for that because I am guilty of motivated reasoning quite frequently. My particular flavor of motivated reasoning focuses on believing that I am more special, more competent, more unique, etc., than I actually am. That I'm somehow a golden nugget surrounded by dirt, a jewel among rocks, the pinnacle of human evolution. Those specific thoughts rarely surface with that language. It's more commonly associated with a general feeling that I'm more competent than those around me, or that I do more for others, or more for my family than they notice. It shows in the feeling that I'm vital to a team or a process. Without me, it would all go to pot. Um, that my words mean more than they do. I only identify the underlying motivated reasoning when I dig into those emotions and I uncover, oh, the way I feel this way is because I think I'm special, yet again. Another area of my life that comes to my mind is religion. I subscribe to a religious belief system, and I can't help but wonder sometimes if that's an area of my life that is supported by motivated reasoning. Do I actually believe in the religious set of statements? Or do I just want them to be true, so I come up with justifications for them being true? In this case, one issue with religion is a reliance on faith. I tend to think that there's enough objective evidence to believe, but not enough objective evidence to prove. Where you land on the religion question, then, is very hard to distinguish from motivated reasoning. If you want to believe in a God, there's enough evidence to support that belief. If you don't want to believe in a God, there are enough explanations to reasonably lead to that conclusion. It's almost as if the entire discussion is one big motivated reasoning exercise, which is frustrating. But all that being said, I sometimes wonder if my religious beliefs and reasoning are only held up with a desire to believe instead of any connection to reality. I don't think they are, but that's what's tricky about motivated reasoning. You can never quite be sure if it's just your subconscious desires. Essentially, trying to identify motivated reasoning in your life can lead to an existentialism of sorts, where you question everything you think you know. A common response to that is to treat the whole argument as worthless, because in the end, as long as I treat people well, that's all that matters. But do I just believe that because I don't want to do the work and figure out what is actually true? Do I just want to have a simple model of the world, one in which I am doing fairly well because I treat people well, and that's all that matters? Hopefully, you enjoyed my thoughts on motivated reasoning. I enjoyed writing about it. I have this sort of internal back and forth pretty frequently um, about whether or not what I'm believing is actually true, or if I'm just saying it to help me feel special. Listing out the risks from the individual and communal perspective have been particularly helpful for me. I'm a little less concerned about whether or not what I'm believing is true. It seems a little bit less important after this essay to be free from motivated reasoning, uh, especially because of how common it is, right? So it's just kind of a thorn in the side that we'll be dealing with our whole lives. So I'm not sure what I'll write about next week. I've been doing some automations. Maybe I'll talk about automation and the benefits of that or whatnot. Um, who knows? But you'll find out next week. Bye.